Good afternoon. Hi. Thank you. My name is Perry Boring, and I'm the founder and the president of the Chamber of Digital Commerce. We are a trade association. We're located in Washington, D.C. We represent what's called the digital asset industry. So part of our membership includes companies working with Bitcoin, blockchain, distributed ledgers, and other blockchain-enabled technologies. We're helping build the regulatory framework for these innovative technologies. And some of the questions we'll discuss today is regulating automatic type of technologies can be huge challenges. A lot of big think questions that we have to dig into. And communicating that with public policymakers is a challenge, but that's what we focus on. On the panel today, we have some of the most innovative and interesting companies in this industry. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, tell us about 30 seconds on their companies. We'll start here with Brian, but to just tell us who you are, your company is, and what exactly it is that you're decentralizing.
I'm Brian Hoffman. I'm CEO of OB1 and the project lead for Open Bazaar, which, if you don't know, is a peer-to-peer decentralized marketplace using Bitcoin. And what we are working, well, obviously we're decentralizing marketplaces, but it creates an opportunity to have a censorship-resistant way to sell goods and services anywhere in the world, and it's absolutely free because there's no middlemen involved.
Hi, my name is Ryan Shea, and I'm one of the co-founders of Blockstack Labs. And we have a decentralized application platform that provides decentralized identity, naming, storage, and authentication. And you may know me as one of the creators of OneName. So we built OneName as the first large application that was ever built on any blockchain, the largest identity system on a blockchain. And we built it on top of our own infrastructure, which is Blockstack. So it allows for these types of applications that are completely decentralized, that don't need servers, that can be completely client-side, and where the users are in control.
Hi everybody, my name is Elizabeth Stark, a proud OneName user. I am co-founder and CEO of a company called Lightning. Our protocol is called Lightning Network, and what it does is it scales and speeds up blockchains. So it relies on the blockchain to have extremely high volume, say millions of transactions per second, instant and very low fee, maybe thousands of a cent transactions, and it can be done in a trustless manner. The way that we accomplish this is by using the blockchain as a dispute resolution mechanism, or a court, so to speak. Kind of like in real life. We sign a lot of contracts, but usually most contracts don't go to court. Similarly, you can do this using digital signatures in a secure manner where you can transact instantly in a very high volume, and then the blockchain can be the judge that determines the outcome, and you always know what that outcome will be, and it will be secure.
My name is Eric Voorhees. I run Shapeshift.io, which is an instant digital asset exchange. So it is the world's fastest and easiest way to convert any leading blockchain-based asset into any other. Our claim to fame is that we built an exchange that I think for the first time in human history did not require either customer information or customer deposits. So both from a privacy perspective and from a customer liability and consumer protection perspective, we've tried to build an innovative platform that would help to grow this industry.
So at a very high level, a marketplace, identity technology, scaling technology, and a crypto-to-crypto exchange. So a lot of different topics and activities and pieces of the technology are touched and represented here on this stage. And as we were preparing for consensus, I got to speak one-on-one with most of the panel and really ask them about what brought you here, what drew you to blockchain, what drew you to this industry, and our conversations. And it's true not only for the folks on the stage today, but most of the entrepreneurs in this industry are extremely passionate about the technology. And you'll find that throughout this entire conference here, people who have left their jobs in either financial institutions or big tech companies who are jumping into this space to dedicate their career full-time to this technology. So I want to open up the question to the panel. what drove your passion to be a part of this ecosystem, and what drew you to blockchain? For whoever wants to jump in first.
I'll jump in first. So I've been in Bitcoin since mid-2011, when $10 Bitcoin seemed really expensive and unrealistic, and people joked that it would never go to $15 or $20. I got involved primarily from an ideological perspective, which is that I fundamentally believe that money and government should be separate, in the same way that speech and government should be separate, or religion and government should be separate. And that has never really been possible before, when the money that everyone uses is government money. So when I heard about Bitcoin, a light bulb went off, and I hoped that it would be, the next big thing, and got a lot of laughs from people, but here we are, and it seems to be growing. So it's been very exciting to see it develop around the world, and can't wait to see what's next.
So part of my background is I was teaching at Stanford and Yale about the future of the internet and decentralized technology. In late 2010, a TA of mine had sent an email with an article from Wired about open source money. And I remember reading it and thinking, open source money, this is cool, it'll probably never work. And yet, I guess with a lot of us, a few months later, I read up more on the technology behind Bitcoin and blockchain, and I was hooked. And coming from the kind of open source technology standpoint, for me, I saw this as a new protocol, not only for financial transactions, but for the entire internet, and the way that technology could be reframed and function.
I'd say for me it's about a few different things. One, it's about democracy, making sure that we don't have any central points of failure in how we govern in our societal fabric, so that we can actually make sure that society remains intact and that the people are actually in control. Another aspect is economic inclusion, making sure that people can build applications very simply, and there's a quick on-ramp to be able to provide services to people around the world. It's also about personal freedom, about self-sovereign identity, and also about security, because we're entering a world where we have so many devices in our lives, so many new challenges, and in order to prevent these catastrophes that we're being faced with, we need to move control to the edges. So I would say, like, for the new world that we're moving into, decentralization and moving power to the edges is absolutely critical.
I spent over 10 years working at Booz Allen Hamilton as a cybersecurity engineer, helping build and design PKI systems for the Department of Defense, classified agencies, and Treasury Department. And so when Bitcoin came along, it was extremely fascinating to see that this infrastructure that existed within these government agencies that was so controlled and so explicit about the way that it was managed could be done in this decentralized fashion. It kind of boggled my mind at first that this was actually even feasible. And so I always followed Bitcoin, but I always wanted to get involved with some project, to participate, and never did, because I was working, as you said, I already had a steady job. And then when dark market came along, which is what, kind of was the impetus for Open Bazaar, I pretty much doubled my duty and spent every night until 2 or 3 in the morning working on Open Bazaar. And when you spend a whole year doing that, then you realize this is something I have to just put everything else aside and do this. This just has to be done. It becomes a passion play, which I think is probably the same for a lot of people on the stage and now in the audience even. It just made sense to give up whatever I was doing and focus on that completely. So.
And Open Bazaar has launched recently. There's been a lot of attention, a lot of media attention, a lot of industry attention. How is the rollout going?
The rollout has been really great. I think we just hit 110,000 downloads, which is pretty great. It's been downloaded in over 130 countries around the world, which shows extreme diversity. I think only 30% of the people are from the U.S. And we're seeing a lot of really exciting types of markets open up within the software, and things that you just would never see on any other online establishment. So.
Now, for the regulators, public policymakers, law enforcement folks who are here or listening in, I think the obvious question for OB1 is, how do you deal with something illegal that might be used or bought or purchased or sold on OB1? How do you deal with criminal activity?
I love this question.
Not
I
to
was
put
just
you on
telling
the
him
spot.
that if I could get to a conference without getting that question, I'd be very happy. No, I mean, I think, what's important to note is that we're not like eBay or Etsy or any of these other centralized marketplaces where we have control of the full stack. We are a software development team. We're an open source project. We build a tool, and tools can be used for malicious activity and tools can be used for positive activity. What we do is we encourage as positive use as possible, but it's really up to the actors in the network to determine how it's used. And so there will be people that do negative things with it, and we don't have control of that. It's a software download. We don't run servers that can censor that stuff. It's not part of the protocol. So our answer is that it's an agnostic network, and we provide people the ability to self-censor. It's up to them.
It does seem strange that there's like this double standard, because companies and people around the world that make all sorts of useful tools, from computers to cars, all that stuff gets used by bad people. And I think just because those projects are old and understood well, people don't realize that. But every terrorist in the world uses a cell phone in some way or another. Every terrorist in the world probably uses email and the internet and computers and all those kind of things. Those are made by companies from the US and from Europe and all these places, and for some reason that's socially permissible. But as soon as you start talking about the world of finance and exchange, for some reason a different standard is held, and I would like to see that go away.
Well, it is. I mean, finance is a heavily regulated industry in general, and a lot of the cases that you're talking about, there's also policies in place. Are they effective? That's a completely different question. But for a decentralized marketplace, this is something new. Are there policies? Should we have policies? Should we have some type of industry standard or best practice to try to keep criminal activity off of it, or not? And I think that's kind of the broader question is, how do we respond to those questions that we know public policymakers and regulators we're going to ask? And I think as an industry, it's smart to think about that, because we're continuing to move towards decentralized economy, marketplace, and whatnot. And I want to build also on what you're talking about a central place, having no central point of failure, which is part of the resiliency of blockchain distributed ledger technology, which is an important piece we should also highlight, because while there may be questions from the law enforcement perspective, if we're also highlighting how resilient the technology actually is, do the pros outweigh the cons? Eric, you recently went through a whole situation of hacks at Shapeshift, but came out on top. Tell us a little bit about how the resiliency of the blockchain proved in your favor during these attacks.
Yeah, so blockchain allows asset transfers basically as easy as sending an email. And we built that concept into Shapeshift such that you could do exchange between assets really easily and without signing up and giving all sorts of information and leaving money on deposit with us. And so that was a cool innovation to do, and sort of theoretically I thought, well, this is great, like it kind of protects people. We're not holding their money, we're not holding their information, so isn't that cool? And then we get hacked, we lose a bunch of our own money, and we had a former employee who basically stole a bunch of money and then sold private information about our networks and our systems to a hacker who then hacked us again. And while it was terrible that we lost some of our own funds, there was no customer money involved because we didn't have accounts, and there was no customer private information. You can bet that if we had, for example, followed the New York bit license and we're taking personal private information of every single customer that was on our website, all of that personal private information would now be in the hands of the hacker all over the dark web. So to me, that is true consumer protection through design, and that's one of the magic things that blockchains allow.
So some of you here are also working together. Your companies are building partnerships together. What do these relationships look like? And tell us a little bit about how the future of decentralized markets in a decentralized economy is starting to come together?
Sure. So we're actually integrated with OpenBazaar. So Brian can tell you as well that OpenBazaar uses Blockstack for its naming system and to provide certain identity information. So we integrated with them. OpenBazaar wanted to have a completely decentralized system, and there were a few core components that were missing, and we could help and step in and provide that assistance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's been really critical when you're building these systems. We have so many people working at this expert level in all these different areas, but yet we continually reinvent the wheel. So, our position from the beginning was, let's not do that. Let's not repeat those mistakes. Let's support other decentralized models and integrate. Let's work together. We can all learn together. We can build our products better, because these guys are going to spend all day long working on, identity solutions while we're focusing on things that are important for our product, the marketplace protocol, et cetera. So, and in the future, if, our product has to scale up, at some point in time, we need something like Lightning Network to exist, and we will collaborate with Lightning Network or any other project that benefits the community at large. So I think it's very critical that we all work together. I think we've seen a lot of interesting negativity against projects and kind of infighting, I think, within the community, because it's a very stressful thing going on right now. But I think there's a lot of really great positive things going on, and as you can see here, I mean, we all talk to each other, we all collaborate very well, and that's really what the bright future of this whole space is.
And so Lightning Network is still in progress. We needed 3 changes to the Bitcoin protocol for it to work optimally. We've gotten the first 2, but we really want the 3rd. It's called segregated witness, for those that know the kind of inner workings of the protocol. So because it's a protocol that we're building, anybody can tap into it, but I expect that we'll be working with a lot of the players within the community, in part because instant clearing of transactions is something that is desirable. Our technology can work on other blockchains or between chains. So you can do instant swaps between a variety of blockchains. So as we see more blockchains come out, if there are people from financial institutions working on chains, Lightning can enable the trustless exchange between them. And perhaps there's some shapeshift relevancy as well for swaps between chains.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. We built Shapeshift to be essentially an open API platform, so that anyone in the industry in any country around the world, anywhere except New York, can plug in to convert between all these digital assets. And we've built ourselves on the theory that we don't know which digital tokens will take off, which will change the world, what they'll do, and what all they'll be used for. But the ability to, without any friction at all, convert these kind of assets into each other seems very important.
And Shapeshift's great too, because for us, we always get asked to integrate altcoins or other projects, and it's very intensive for us to have to focus on that. But Shapeshift, I mean, our users are already going to Shapeshift. They pay for, their products in Bitcoin on OpenBazaar, but they use whatever their, Dogecoin to get it converted over to Bitcoin, and it works for them perfectly, and it requires no work on our part to actually do that. So.
Yeah, and also on our decentralized naming system, you can buy domain names with Bitcoin. So with an integration with Shapeshift, you could allow for buying names with any kind of digital currency. And then with an integration with Lightning, you can actually do domain name transfers instantaneously. So there's a lot of different possible collaboration options.
Yeah, I think it's a really good sign of the industry that companies that are building in this space are helping each other so that each person in each company's product is better because of the other people that are doing other exciting things.
Let's fast forward this conversation 20 years. What does the future of the decentralized industry look like? Jetsons?
We'll probably still be arguing about Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah.
So one of the futures that I foresee is one in which you can easily send a very small or medium or larger amount of value in the way that you send, say, a text message or an email today. Right now, there's still an underwriting cost of at least, say, 29 cents plus 3% in order to transfer value. But what if, your self-driving car wants to go pay for electricity to charge its battery? Right now, that's not really possible. The technology that we're building with Lightning and all of us are building can make a world where you can have this seamless transaction at a very micro level, but then can add up to quite a bit possible. So if anything, you can have transactions of small amounts of value be the dopamine that affects the world of machines that are going to be transacting with other machines.
Yeah, and this is why some of these regulations are so problematic, because they try to fit the blockchain industry into some specific part of the financial industry. And no one, including the experts on this stage who are involved in this industry, know how these blockchains will unfold, what these tokens will be used for. And it would be like if in the early days of the internet, everyone that was publishing content was categorized as some kind of publisher under publishing regulations and had to get approval and licensing to put up their blogs. The internet would look totally different today. Bitcoin and the blockchain industry are far too new for anyone to understand how it's going to unfold.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, and very similar to the creation of the internet. One of the first consumer use cases was email, simple email, send a message online instantly, pretty much anywhere in the world, basically for free.
And let's not forget that email predated the web substantially, so the web is a relatively new innovation. So like in blockchain world, we're still probably pre-web right now.
And we're talking about currency applications.
Yeah.
But just as the internet is bigger than email, meaning we can do more than send email with the internet.
Yeah, and what if email when that came out had been considered first-class mail from the post office, and only the government was able to transfer email messages between parties? Like, how would that have affected the world? It would be terrible. No one likes the post office. Imagine if we had to send all of our email through the government email post service. It never would have happened.
That's a great point too. I mean, I think Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general is an empowering technology, right? Like, I think as a planet, we become so lazy. We just accept how everything works, right? Things are slow. We can't do this. We can't do that. We can't open our business in this country or that country. We can't sell this on eBay. I mean, there's all these can'ts, and we just accept that. And if we have a problem, we have to deal with customer service, and they suck, but you have no option. You have to deal with them. Bitcoin democratizes all of this stuff. It just unbundles all that. It breaks apart the stack. If you want to change who you deal with to do customer support, you can do so. If you want to start a business in Tanzania and sell shoes to some guy in Brooklyn, you can do that. And you don't ever have to ask for permission. It just is. And that's why we work on this every day, is because we see these people. There's a guy who's selling cookies from Croatia, and it's like, I ordered literally Croatian cookies for $5. They were at my doorstep like in 4 days, and I transferred Bitcoin in like 2 seconds. He was paid immediately, and he couldn't be any more ecstatic. And he's continually done that, shipping them out all over the world. The fact that can actually happen that quickly, that easily, is just amazing.
Last summer, I was in Kosovo giving a talk related to decentralized technology, blockchain, and afterward, these 11-year-old kids came up to me and they started asking me really advanced questions about mining, about the Bitstamp hack that had occurred at the time, and I was like blown away. It turned out, because they're from Kosovo and because of the status of Kosovo, it was very hard for them to buy things online. Bitcoin had been the means through which they were able to finally purchase things on the internet, and then they got really interested. They started coding their own currency. They got really into the technology. So they're really the global use cases that sometimes in the US we forget about. But broadly speaking, you have this interchange that wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah, and I would say even more broadly than Bitcoin, the blockchain technology really provides for not just decentralization and democratization of money, but also all kinds of services, and also interoperability, right? The decentralization of identity, the decentralization of naming, right? The decentralization of storage, moving absolutely everything to the edges, right? Putting the individual in control, enabling self-sovereign identity, allowing for Internet of Things devices to actually be truly secure, right? Because they themselves have self-sovereign identities, right? Individuals, corporations, right? Devices, everything. So I'd say, like, down the road, the vision for the future is a world that's much more secure, a world where new applications that couldn't have been imagined or built before are now able to be built. A world where maybe the largest applications are actually part of the same network, right? Kind of like how we saw with the internet, a whole new class of applications developed that were built on internet protocols. So we're going to see a whole new class of applications that are also sharing the same data layers, sharing the same identity system where the users and the clients are in control.
So the past year, we've seen quite an evolution of the blockchain industry, especially with enterprise type players from pretty much every major institution on Wall Street. We've seen the global IT consultancies all start publishing white papers, serving clients' needs involving blockchain and distributed ledger technology, as well as major technology companies. Like today, we announced Microsoft had joined our board. For larger companies, big enterprise players, how would you guys work with these type of companies? How would they, what is their play here? What is the game plan for the banks, the technology companies?
Well, from the Lightning standpoint, I think there's been a debate within the community and somewhat of a meme that blockchains can't scale. With our technology, we're, of course, scaling them in a trustless manner. So even with private or semi-public chains, and we can debate what that exactly means, but say the non-Bitcoin chains, there are use cases for large-scale transactions per second, instant clearing, going between these chains. So we've seen a lot of these institutions that, interestingly, years ago, 2-3 years ago, you couldn't even, the word blockchain wasn't even in the vocabulary, and now it's become so widespread. And here at this event, we have, 1,500 people, which is really exciting. So from their standpoint, I think for Lightning, they're interested in the cross-chain aspect, the micro-transactions, or millions per second, and then the kind of instant aspect as well.
So we work with a couple of pretty large corporations and some that we haven't announced yet. And they come to us for increasing efficiency, for increasing interoperability, lowering overhead costs, having a system that is not completely tied to their own infrastructure, right? Something that we can come and do a deployment within a corporation, allow for each of the sub-organizations to not be central points of failure, and then also work with that corporation and its partners and have an identity and data system that where none of the companies in the consortium represent a single point of failure and actually have better business processes involved. So that's our application platform. We roll it up to both developers and large corporations.
So we've got 10 minutes left, and I have a lot of questions from the audience and those listening in, so I'm going to start rattling these off. The first one is from Anonymous, shocker. How can blockchain decentralize existing lending markets, and is there a need for a regulatory lending framework around virtual transactions?
I mean, how much more regulations you need than that, like, theft and fraud is illegal? Those can be the two rules, and if people cause fraud upon each other or steal things, then prosecute them. I don't really think you need much more than that. That covers almost all the use cases. The peer-to-peer lending, I think, is interesting, but it's not going to take off until we have more advanced identity on the distributed in these distributed systems. So as people start using a distributed identity that they build, as opposed to their government-issued driver's license, which is pretty archaic and which our children will all laugh about someday.
Well, they won't even be driving, so.
Well, they may not even be driving.
They need to drive.
As that technology grows, I think the peer-to-peer lending will become really important because creditworthiness will be attached to things that are actually transparently trackable, and people won't use silly things like, FICO scores or whatever. There will be much more advanced ways of knowing exactly how trustworthy someone is, the transactions that they've carried out in the past. And this is one of the beauties of Bitcoin is that you have this ability to be completely private if you want to, which all free people should have the right to do. And at the same time, the ability to be completely transparent about things in which that transparency will help two parties in a relationship. So there's a really great sort of dual nature to this technology, and I think a lot of people haven't appreciated that yet.
Yeah, you could have a peer-to-peer reputation system where multiple authorities can come in and bestow reputation upon individuals in the network. That would be a very important component for I think, enabling this lending system.
All right, next question is from Carson. And what is your vision of decentralized markets for tangible industries such as energy, mobility, logistics, and manufacturing?
I'm not an expert on any of those things, so I'll let you guys talk about it.
Well, from the Lightning standpoint, I'm really excited about the potential, again, to have these high volume transactions. What if you could have solar panels, on a variety of houses that could then automatically allocate, energy to other, people involved in this marketplace, and then the payments could occur automatically. There's a lot of talk of smart contracts. I think there's going to be a panel soon after about it. But effectively, if you can have an automated payment that is contingent upon a certain outcome, that is a smart contract, and Lightning can help further those. So from our end, the financial transaction and the automated programmatic angle, where you can write in logic, you can program logic, and then that can execute, I think will be extremely relevant to all of those industries.
Yeah, and I'll build off that. I think when we talked about energy, mobility, logistics. I think it's very important in all of those industries for the different players to be speaking the same language. If they're speaking the same language in terms of identity and speaking the same language in terms of the data that they access, it can greatly improve efficiency. It can greatly improve security, decrease the likelihood that mistakes will be made. It can save lives, right? So being able to be interoperable and work on that same network, that's really critical.
All right, the next question is by Anonymous, who's back. And a question that I have found to be somewhat contentious within our membership is, do we need a standards body? And I've heard both sides of the argument, but interested for you all, from a technical perspective, do we need a standards body?
Need? I don't think so. Would it help? Yeah. Will it happen? Yeah. And I don't think there will be single standards bodies, but it'll emerge from consensus.
I've had a considerable amount of work on doing health IT standards while I was working at Booz Allen, and what we found is a lot of these standards get kind of bastardized because the big companies come in and they want to jam in what benefits their businesses, and they don't want to make big moves, because if they want to spend 20, 30, 40, $50 million on a project, they want to know that what they're building on is not going to shift on them, right? So they need those standards. But I think right now this industry is so nascent that it's not relevant right now. It feels like it's something that we probably need to look towards, but I can't see some of these smaller companies dedicating a good amount of resources to work on standards where the technology is changing so fast that the standards are out of date by the time they publish them. So it's a very difficult time to say that standards are needed. Because it's counterintuitive, I think, to general IT, but right now it feels like it's too early.
I'd pretty much agree with that. I think it's maybe useful to start talking about it and exploring standards, but yeah, it is still pretty early. Things are moving extremely quickly. We're working on a bunch of different schemas and standards with some other companies in the space. Consensus and Uport, they're one of them that we're collaborating with, and a couple of large corporations. So I think it is great to actually work from the ground up and start seeing, hey, these are some not quite global standards, but standards that are evolving between players that have just come together and recognized, hey, wait, this works really well for us, and this works really well for us. And I think that will tend towards producing more high-quality actual standards in the long run. It can avoid some of the things like corporations coming in and taking control of the process. But also, I think at some point, it does make sense for bodies like the W3C for us all to work with them, and we actually had a call with them last week. So I think there's definitely a position, and we should start talking about it. But yeah.
I'm a big proponent, drawing from the IETF, of rough consensus and running code. So for now, I think that's kind of what's been going on.
Yeah, and while it may be early, putting standards takes time. So even though efforts might start now, it still might be a couple years before they're actually finished.
Agreed.
Yeah.
What are some of the more reputable or promising standards initiatives that you guys are engaged with or seeing?
There's CCSS, which is, I think, cryptocurrency security standard. So they can help any company sort of figure out how to secure Bitcoin or other blockchain tokens. Since these tokens are very much like digital gold, they've really, I think, catapulted the need for better computer and IT security, and CCSS is doing that pretty well so far.
We've actually been working off of a lot of existing internet standards. We've been working off of schema.org, JSON-LD, working off of JSON Web Tokens, a lot of things that are have been around cryptography standards. And we've, like I said before, we've been working with Consensus and some other companies in the space on collaborating and extending these standards and making them more relevant for systems that work on the blockchain that have decentralized components, right? We're also working with IPFS and a few others. So.
And from a public policy perspective, best practices oftentimes are very helpful in the regulatory process. One, because it's something that the industry itself can put forward as a general guideline for policymakers. And oftentimes you can get ahead of regulation, meaning if we're seeing something that is uncomfortable to public policymakers, if they have some type of document they can point to, it takes the pressure off for them to feel the need that they have to publish regulation. So for example, the Chamber has a best practices working group, and we just finished our consumer best practices, which is a guide for consumers, everything you need to know from buying and buying, using, or selling digital currencies. Very generic, just basic guidelines. Once we finish those, we'll go into compliance, security. We're also going to go into smart contracts as well. But the reason why we did this is another trade association that's working in the credit card industry, they did best practices for credit cards, and they were able to push off a rulemaking for 5 years just by having the industry put forward some basic best practices about how to use credit cards. So we have 1 minute left, so I have time for one really quick question. So I'll go down the line here. Do we think we have found the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto? Yes or no?
I'm unconvinced and confused, which is the same I was yesterday. So nothing's changed in my mind.
No.
I'd say no. I mean, I'd love to look into it further, but it doesn't seem like it's the case.
I think it sure seems like we have, but it's strangely disappointing. But
All right, well, there you have it, straight from the experts.